Hello and welcome to Math 2 Cypress High School Summer Remediation Program. In this video we're going to be covering Unit 3F, Solving Systems of Linear Equations, and specifically Section 1, reviewing the slope-intercept form. To be able to graph a line, there's a couple different forms that we use. The easiest being the slope-intercept form. That's what we're going to cover right now. The slope-intercept form of a line is y equals mx plus b. So I want you to write that down with me on problem number 2, y equals mx plus b. Now m and b are very special in the slope-intercept form. M stands for the slope of the line. And the slope is known as the rise over run. Sometimes we're going to see the slope as a fraction, sometimes not. But the slope itself is the rise over run. Rise being how far up and down we go. That's the number that's in the numerator of the slope. And the number in the denominator is how far left and right we will go. Now b is the y-intercept. So I want you to write y-intercept next to b. Y-intercept really just means that's where it's going to cross the y-axis. So we can draw a little graph right here. The y-axis is the up and down one. This point right there is b. Whatever b is where the line is going to cross the y-axis. That's why we call it the slope for m, intercept for b forms, slope-intercept form. Now, what we're going to do in this section is give you the slope and the y-intercept and ask you to write an equation. That's the next couple problems down here. What you should do on all of these problems is create a little template. Y equals, leave some space for your m, your slope, x, and then leave some space for b. B is either going to be a positive or negative. And we'll write it down accordingly. Now over here on problem number 3, I give you the slope and the y-intercept. M is the slope, so what I want you to do is put a little m equals right there. M equals 7/4. Now in the equation it is y equals mx. M is always attached to x, so in this case my m is 7/4. This is going to be y equals 7/4. That is my mx. And now we have plus b over here. So this is going to be plus b, which is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is given as 2, so I'm going to change this to b equals 2, which means because 2 is positive, it's going to be plus 2. The y-intercept is always adding or subtracting here. If it's positive, we add. If it's negative, we subtract. And this is our answer. That's all we have to do on this problem is fill out the template. My slope goes here attached to x. My y-intercept goes out here, adding or subtracting to the slope in x. Now the next two problems ask you to derive the slope-intercept form from the line given to you. The way we do this type of problem is we start with where the line crosses the y-axis. That is going to be our b. So our line right here crosses at -4, which means my b is equal to -4. I'm just going to make a little note for myself so I remember that it crosses here. Now I need to look at this line and figure out the slope of it. The slope is the rise over run, which means I need to figure out how much I have to go up and how much I go over to get to the next point. That's perfectly on the graph. This point right here lands perfectly. It goes through a perfect spot. None of these other spots really go through a perfect point except for this green one right here. So these are the two. I need to figure out how far I have to go up and over to get there. Now the very first thing I'm going to look at is the direction of my line. From left to right, is it going up or down? If we're reading this line from left to right, this specific one from left to right is going down, which means that my m is going to be negative. If the line is going down from left to right, your slope is negative. On number 10, our line is going up from left to right, which means that the slope is positive. So in this case, my slope is negative. Now I need to figure out how far I go up and over. My rise comes first on the top of the fraction. So I'm going to start a little fraction right here and say, all right, I need to figure out my rise. I have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to the next point. So the number on top, my rise is 5. And my run left and right from this point is 1. My run goes on the bottom, 1. So my b is -4, my m is -5/1. I can write out, just like I did on problem number 3, an equation of a line from this. Y equals, I'm going to leave some space for my m, put the x, and my m is -5 over 1, and my b is a -4, so this is going to be -5 over 1x minus 4. Now you could simplify this equation down a little bit. You don't have to, but it looks prettier if you look at this slope right here. -5 divided by 1 is just -5. So I can change this piece right here to be -5. It's the same exact thing. -5x minus 4. These two are the same exact equations of a line. This just gives me rise over run, where this just gives me a generic slope, but it's the same exact number. -5 over 1 is the same as -5. So either of these two answers are acceptable for problem number 9. Now we're going to turn the page and go to, let's try out problem number 13. Number 13 is good. It gives us a nice slope and a good y-intercept to work with. When we are graphing a line, we have to understand that we're working in y equals mx plus b format. My m is always attached to x. My b is always the one on the outside being added or subtracted to x. So what I want to do on all of these is label my m and my b accordingly. My m in this case is 1 over 5. So I'm going to put here, keep the color coordination, m is equal to 1 over 5. And my b is over here a positive 3, so b equals 3. Now I can graph a line given these two things. I'm going to start at b. I'm going to start at the y-intercept and plot that point. So I'm going to start with b. Maybe I'll make a little note here. Start at b. b is -3, and we always start on the up and down axis. We're always going to start on this, so I'm going to find the positive 3 and plot a point there. That's where I'm going to start from. Now my slope tells me the rise over run, which means that my rise is a 1 and my run is a 5. Now because it's positive, my line is from left to right going to go up. So it's going to go up 1 over 5. So I'm going to start at this 3 right here where I plotted my last point, my y-intercept, and I'm going to rise 1 and run 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can plot a point. Now I can also go in the opposite direction, but I need to make sure that when I go down 1, I have to go to the left to keep my line going at an uphill. So I'm going to go down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plot a point. And you notice how that point is in a perfect line with the other two I've already plotted. And once we have a few points plotted, we can then draw our graph. Hopefully yours is a little better connecting the dots than mine was. But that's how you graph the equation of a line. You start with b, plot the point at b, and then use your slope, the rise over run, to figure out a couple more points, and then plot the line. Now I also want to make sure we cover a couple of different types of lines. Number 18, this looks a little different. This doesn't look like the y equals mx plus b format. There's no x involved. It's just y equals -1. When this type of line happens, when it's y equals just a number, then this is going to give us a horizontal line at whatever number is right here. This could be a 5, it could be a 25, in this case it's a -1. So what we're going to do is plot a point on the y-axis. This is y equals, so we're going to go on the y-axis. Notice how they're labeled. Y equals -1, so I'm going to go to the -1 on the y-axis, plot a point, and then draw a horizontal line through it. That is the line for y equals -1. It's a horizontal line. The last type of line I want to cover is the very next one, number 19. You're going to see this one a little bit here and there. X equals -3. Just like when it was y equals -1, we're going to look at this and say, alright, that's x. I'm going to find the x-axis, that's this one right here, and plot a point at -3. Now the only difference between the y one and the x one is this is going to be a vertical line if it is x equals a number. So I'm starting on the horizontal axis, which means I draw a vertical line through that point. And that line is graphed. So those are kind of some special cases that I wanted to cover. And number 21 is also kind of has a special case. Right here, 3/2 is attached to x. That means that 3/2 is going to be my slope. I'm going to label that with an m. However, there is nothing over here for me to find my b with. My b would usually be somewhere over here as like a +2 or a -5, but there's nothing over here, which means that b equals 0. If there's nothing adding or subtracting the x, then b is at 0, which means we would start here at the center at 0. And then we'll use the slope, 3/2, rise over run, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, to plot the rest of our points. And I can go down 3/2 and graph a line. So anytime you don't have a number adding or subtracting the x, that means that your b is equal to 0 and the graph starts right in the center at the origin.